Welcome to The World According to Mike Graham, the only show where you get to see the world through my eyes. Coming up tonight, I'll be making one lucky guess Prime Minister for the week and finding out why kale is still a thing. But first, almost 3 million people have stopped paying their TV licence. What is going on with the BBC? Let's find out on this week's Deep Dive. BBC Television first launched in 1936, and straight away it was a huge success. Television had something for everyone. There was art.
In the last few months I've been taking works from the London galleries to the Alexandra Palace, but I've kept in mind all the time the high percentage of so-called modern art.
There was roller skating. And there was even tap dancing. Who could ask for more? Well, the executives at the BBC were concerned that viewers may not know how to pay for this, so they helpfully produced these friendly commercials to show you how.
Yes, there's a TV set on number 5. It's in the front room. And they're watching Columbo.
If you don't have a TV licence, it won't take us long to find you.
The BBC is loved around the world for its award-winning drama. Who could forget when EastEnders attracted 30 million viewers? These days, they're lucky to get 1 million. Although looking at this, I'm not surprised. The BBC prides itself on the highest journalistic standards. When you're presenting live news, you've got to be ready for anything. Breaking news, last-minute interviews, and even putting on your shoes.
Oh my God. Sorry about that delay.
Presenting live TV is also better when you turn off your phone.
Look, my advice to him is not to listen to my telephone, never mind. My advice to him... Would you turn it off?
I will, don't worry.
The BBC collected almost £4 billion from the public last year and has 12 regional newsrooms delivering the very best in local journalism.
Hello, good morning. We start with an apology. We have got a problem here in the studio with the lights. I hope that you can still hear me.
The BBC also employs the best weather presenters. The first thing they teach you in weather school is never confuse dog walkers with doggers.
And look at it. Fabulous. The sun is beating down. We've seen lots of doggers, lots of, not doggers of course, lots of dog walkers and joggers.
The BBC loves to educate us about climate change too. In July, Spain had a little heat wave, so their climate editor jetted off to Alicante for the day. He blamed the heat wave on carbon emissions. I wonder if his jet had anything to do with it.
Climate change is pushing temperatures up and making heat waves like this longer and more extreme.
Earlier this year, the NHS celebrated its 75th birthday. Sadly, over 7 million people are still waiting for hospital treatment and thousands can't see their GP. But don't worry about any of that. Here is how the People's Republic of the BBC marked the occasion.
Happy birthday, NHS. Happy birthday to you.
And that is my deep dive into the BBC. Now let's find out why almost 3 million people have stopped paying their TV tax. So now I'm joined by the campaigns director of Defund the BBC, Rebecca Ryan. Rebecca, thanks for joining us. Welcome to The World According to Mike Graham. We've just seen a catalogue of what can only be described as errors, blunders, messing up live television. BBC News and Current Affairs has huge problems, but it's not just the news and current affairs section that has problems, is it? I mean, the BBC is kind of riddled with problems now.
Absolutely, and this happens sort of week in, week out. We saw only this week that you had the BBC, you know, setting up these huge shots with the EU flags. Last night, the proms. We see this every single year, and every year it's an absolute success for Defund the BBC because we get people flooding to Defund the BBC with, you know, wanting to support the cause and getting rid of this institution.
Exactly right, and so many people now have decided to stop paying their licence fee. I mean, it's reaching into the millions, isn't it? They've also had problems at Radio 2, where they let go all sorts of people, including people that have ended up in this building. Ken Bruce, who disappeared. Chris Evans is here from there. Graham Graham Norton, of course. Vanessa Feltz came from the BBC as well. Paul O'Grady, before his death, was kind of shuffled out of the building. And apparently, in order for them to achieve a younger audience, but all they've got is a smaller audience.
Well, this is the thing. They're fixated on this younger audience, aren't they? And they're just absolutely chasing their own tails on this. Because the more they do that, the more they're alienating the older audience, and that's why we're seeing these huge figures of almost 3 million saying.
So, do you think I mean, if we were having this conversation in 5 years' time, will they still be in the same form as they are now, or do you think they'll have to start really seriously breaking it up?
I think they're going to have to wake up to the digital age, really, aren't they? Because the thing is, it's just not how people consume content anymore. People don't sit there how they used to in the 80s and 90s waiting for something to be broadcast to them. They know there's so much choice.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, by the time, unless you're literally living under a stone, if you don't know what the news is when the 6 o'clock news comes on, you know, you're a very unusual person in this country. And I know that there are probably older people perhaps watching this going, that's not right. I don't have an iPhone. I don't have Twitter. Well, maybe not. But most people have heard something before the 6 o'clock news.
Absolutely. This is the thing. People just don't wait to be broadcast to in that way. And so, there's a tsunami coming from the younger generations, and they're aware of that, which is why they're pandering to it. But at the same time, you've got the older generation realising, thanks to COVID and what have you, that they can, you know, how to use Netflix and Amazon Prime.
And let's face it, they still pay way too much money to people. I mean, the number of people who are paid over sort of, you know, £300,000 a year. And we haven't even talked about Hugh Edwards yet. You know, the man who used to be the sort of flagship news presenter, who's currently still not at work. We don't know where he is, but presumably, you know, he's still recovering from whatever it was that was ailing him. We haven't even mentioned St Gary of Lineker either, who's still on what, £1 million a year to read a few pieces of information off an auto cue on Match of the Day.
Exactly, and this is the thing. And every time Gary tweets, you know, again, more people, we get loads more followers because he enrages people so much. And we had that whole debacle, didn't we, fairly recently, where he was tweeting about government policy where he shouldn't have been doing that.
Well, this week he's done a great one. He's actually appeared on a single which has been released by somebody about refugees called Illegal, and he's sort of voicing over this piano music. Again, nothing at all to do with his job. He'll say, well, it's just about being a great humanitarian, which of course it is. But there's something absolutely rotten at the heart of the BBC. And they're going to have to kill it at some point, aren't they?
I think so. And I think what they should really do is they should step into the digital age. They should, you know, whilst they can, whilst the, you know, the window of opportunity is there for them, they should try and give Netflix a run for their money. You know, they talk about this global soft power, this audience that they've got. Well, let's get those people paying for it, you know, and then maybe the BBC can stand on its own 2 feet and be answerable to the people that want to pay for it.
Let them actually be judged by the commercial world. If you want to watch something, then, you know, yes, I don't mind if you pay for it, but, you know, don't make us pay for it. Because, again, like I say, they keep getting it wrong. You know, they've decided a great idea for a new drama is to look back at the way Jimmy Savile managed to get away with molesting loads and loads of people while he was working for the BBC.
Exactly. Well,
Incredible.
This is just awful.
Nobody wants to see that, do they?
No, exactly. Well, this is the thing. It's the BBC marking its own homework. And what we know is the BBC is very good at, you know, making itself look good. That's what it spends a huge amount of money doing, is promoting itself. And all it's going to do in this situation is sort of say, oh, look, aren't we good? We've taken a look at this. We realise he was a bad man. You know, here's our putting our hands up. But actually, people are really appalled by the Savile scandal. We hear day in, day out from people who are just absolutely disgusted by the BBC's handling of that. And it's not right for them to be spending licence fee payers' money on making that so that they can say, oh, look at this amazing drama
And imagine paying somebody to play Jimmy Savile. I mean, it just beggars belief. Rebecca, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Rebecca Ryan there with Defund the BBC. Surely, sooner or later, that's what's going to end up happening. Well, that was my deep dive for this week. It's been a good week for Donald Trump. He hasn't faced any new charges at all. Well done, the Donald. Let's have the Trump takedown.
You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN.
Would I approve waterboarding? You bet your ass I'd approve it. You bet your ass. In a heartbeat.
You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN.
Each week, I ask, why is this still a thing? I've wondered about trains. I've wondered about Lycra. I wonder what it's going to be this week. Have you ever tasted kale? It's this green stuff, right? They give it to you everywhere you go. Every restaurant that you go to. Would you like some kale? No, I don't want any kale. I don't like kale. It's basically cabbage. It's been around since the 4th century BC. That's an awfully long time ago. Do you know how much it costs? It costs £11 a kilo. It's cabbage. Why would you pay £11 a kilo for cabbage? Why would you even want a kilo of cabbage? I don't know why kale is still a thing. I think we should ban it altogether. Just stop it. Just stop growing it. That's the end of part 1. Coming up, I'll be making one lucky contestant Prime Minister for the week. Welcome back to The World According to Mike Graham. Coming up, I'm going to be making one lucky person Prime Minister for the week, and I'll be apologising to Tony Blair. And now it's time to meet our contestants for this week, and I'm delighted to say we are joined by Emma Barr, who is, of course, the former advisor to the government. Is that fair to say?
Yes, absolutely.
And, of course, for the first time in The World According to Mike Graham, we've got Ryan Mark Parsons, former Apprentice star, and it says here Daily Star columnist.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
yes,
welcome,
writing for them.
welcome to both of you. What would be your first thing to do as Prime Minister?
The first thing I do is clarify the law to mean that biological sex and sex were different,
Yes.
to keep men out of women's changing rooms.
Yes.
Because I think this is probably a more serious topic than...
Well, the thing is, it's now considered controversial, isn't it? That sort of
Yeah, I mean,
you know.
I can't understand how it's extreme to think that trans women with all their biological advantages shouldn't be in women's sport. I
Right.
mean, you only have to look at the results to notice
Well,
that
also,
that's unfair.
the sports seem to be recognising it now, don't they? Most of the sports are now going, well, to be honest, if you are born a man, you probably can't actually compete against other women.
I think the backlash has been huge
Yeah.
now, and it's only going to get worse over the next 10 years.
But if you don't know that it's a unisex changing room, or if it's a ladies' changing room, and you suddenly find yourself next to somebody who gets undressed...
Or even...
Sometimes it's not signposted.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Even a women's refuge or a women's prison.
Yeah.
We've seen those examples.
And in hospital wards as well.
Yeah.
Right. OK. Ryan Mark, what's your first one?
Well, this lends itself quite nicely to Emma's law. And this is me saying I think we should ban all dating apps.
Good idea.
I did Celebsky dating last year. I
Did
came
you?
back for this season.
How did it go?
It was a disaster.
Was it?
It was a disaster
Right.
in summary, yeah. I mean, nothing. The agents are amazing. Paul and Anna, they're fabulous,
Right.
but they set me up with the worst people
Yes.
imaginable. And I've since been on dating apps to try and recover my reputation, and they're just as horrendous.
Yeah, I've
and I
never
think
been
they
near a
deserve to be
dating
banned.
app because I'm far too old to even think about that. But I mean, the idea of actually just meeting someone for a drink that you've been talking to on a dating app, it seems ridiculous to me. You know, because people just don't meet each other normally now. You can't go up to somebody in a bar, can you, and start talking to them, because otherwise they think you're some kind of mad predator. So if they meet you on an app, suddenly that's okay.
But that's it, and I think that's a sad thing because people feel so pressurised when they're going up to someone organically at a bar or club, wherever it is. All of these societal pressures now on everyone, and I feel like dating apps are the last resort, the only thing that people have now where they can kind of monitor their language, and it's the only kind of way to meet people, and I think that's so sad. But also, the conversations are so dry on dating apps. They're so stagnant and awkward. I don't know if you're on dating apps, but I can't stand
No,
it.
I'm not. I think that would be a very bad idea.
Okay.
But when I was on dating apps, I was on Tinder a very, very long time ago.
Yeah.
And everyone has the same first conversation. So you're almost going by a script. So it is almost like one of those scripted dating apps, dating shows.
Yeah.
Do they do things like they do on Uber, where they rate you, like you have a rating for as to how truthful you are, or you know how sensible
back
you
when
are,
I used
or how
Tinder.
interesting? I think they should have that.
They should have that. They
Better
don't
than
have
swipe
that.
left, swipe right, purely based on looks.
You should, I think you should have like a 5-star rating, and then you can decide.
Because I mean, I
suppose
suppose the problem with something like that is that it could be abused, couldn't it, by somebody who had a really bad experience with you and then just kind of flames you on this app and says this guy was an absolute swine, horrible person. You know, this woman, you know, tricked me into doing all sorts of things. I didn't know she pretended to be so. I mean, I suppose that would be the problem.
But if you, as you say, you copy the Uber model, you can only rate someone once,
right,
based on your one interaction with them.
Yeah.
So I think that would
Or
work.
even just rate the photo. Just go off the photo and just rate that out of 5 or 10.
Well, rate the reality of the photo out of 5.
Well, exactly. I mean, the amount of catfishes I've discovered on the dating apps, that's another problem. I mean, honestly...
Don't show off.
Right, well, we must move on. Emma, what's your second one?
My second one is to bring back the ban on trophy hunting imports.
I thought you were going to say bring back trophy hunting for a minute.
No. I think as an animal welfare campaigner, that would be a very, very bad slip of the tongue.
No.
This is basically to say that it would become illegal, as was in the Conservative Party manifesto, have to put that in, to go abroad, shoot a lion, a rhino, or an elephant, or another species, and bring back, for example, their head, hang on your wall as some kind of trophy.
Is it not banned then? Can you do that?
You can do that at the moment, yes.
Wow. Why? How come?
Well, because the Conservative Party haven't put through the legislation that they said they were going to.
Oh, I see. Well, haven't had enough time. We've only been in for 13 years.
It was very recently talked out by the House of Lords. So I would bring it back because it is something everyone in Parliament seemed to be pretty agreed on the fact that this was. We're a nation of animal lovers.
Well, I was doing another show this morning and we were talking about taking selfies with just wild animals that are living.
Right.
And that created such a fuss in the press. Some surprise, there's nothing stopping people taking pictures with dead animals. I think that's shocking.
I think it's just bringing the animals back.
Right, okay.
That's banned because we can.
So it's all right to shoot them, but you just can't do anything with them.
Well, I don't think we can control the laws in other countries.
No,
more's the pity.
That's what you say. Well, yeah, exactly right. Next one for you.
So I am, quite frankly, fed up with all of the soporific news to do with Harry and Meghan, and now. Now they're in the press.
They're back this week, aren't they?
They're back in the press, and they're at the Invictus Games. They look like Kylie Jenner and Timothée Chalamet at the US Open. They're just so... everything about them makes me cringe.
I know, it's awful, isn't it?
And I just want one day a week, at least one day a week, where we don't have any reports on Meghan and Harry, where it would be illegal, and that's what I would do.
Yes, I mean, it would be great, wouldn't it, if the press could just ignore them, even if it's only for a little while. So I think it would drive them mad as well. Because it would appear that they kind of stayed quiet for a bit, didn't they? When they saw, after all that sort of comedy stuff in America, when they started having fun poked at them, people were kind of, even in the States, would go, come off it. You're not really having that bad of a life. You've got millions of pounds in the bank. You've got a massive mansion in Montecito. Your life isn't really terrible. But they sort of have made a comeback, which is slightly disturbing me. I don't want them to make a comeback.
And I've just had enough of it. I love the moment of silence they had. It was such a relief.
Yeah.
And now they're triumphantly all over the press. And I was seeing some article today about them cuddling up at the Invictus Games.
Yeah,
and
holding hands.
So smug.
They're too old to hold hands. I'm sorry.
It's all of the PDA that puts me off. I think just stop it.
Yeah, I know.
It feels false.
And all that kind of loving looks that they do. Nobody does that. I mean, you were showing your ring there. I presume you've been married for a while.
After a while. Engaged.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Oh, right. Oh, steady. It's obviously not getting married anytime soon. But, you don't stare into each other's eyes lovingly after you've had 2 kids. It doesn't happen. I can tell you that because I've had 4. But anyway, back to you, Emma. What's your next one?
My last one is getting rid of the mandatory putting of calories on menus at restaurants. It's only over if you have only 250 people in the business.
Right.
But I don't think, especially in this economy, many people are going out for a meal if it's not a special occasion or a treat.
Right.
And the last thing I want to do is to be lectured to by the nanny state.
Right.
I personally don't go for a meal and think, oh, do you know what? A sticky toffee pudding or a fruit salad, which one of those is more healthy? I don't need to be told that.
I know people have said to me, though, they've looked at, say, in a restaurant, and they've looked at having steak and chips or a hamburger, and then they go, well, look, the hamburger's a much bigger calorie intake, so I'm not going to have that.
I think it ruins the fun, and it's also taking responsibility away from the individual.
Right.
Because if you really care that much about the nutrition of your food, look it up before you go. If you really care that much. And if you're going out for a treat, enjoy it.
Exactly. I think it's pathetic. If you're going out to celebrate, you're going to a restaurant, you want to enjoy the food in front of you. And if you're analysing how many calories are in a burger or a cheesecake, just don't go out.
Exactly.
Just eat some broccoli at home, have some cabbage or something.
Exactly.
Don't go out at all.
Right. Ryan, Mark, your final one?
Yes, my final one is, the weather's... we had a terrible summer, but the weather is going to get worse. And I hate it when I go out and I'm prepared, I bring an umbrella, and my friend doesn't bring an umbrella, and they force me to share my umbrella with them. I never do it. I let them get wet.
Right. Have you got a large umbrella, or is it a small umbrella?
No, it's a kind of compact umbrella.
You can't really share those, can you?
Well, no, exactly, and it's so flimsy, and they kind of want me to hold it and manoeuvre it, and I'm just like, no.
I always enjoy people who have umbrellas in the wind and watching them blow inside out. I don't know why I get a sort of bizarre...
As someone who that has happened to me as well. So I do have a slight problem. I like people with small umbrellas, but I do have a problem with people with those large umbrellas that boff you every time you walk past.
Absolutely right. But it is very much a British thing, isn't it, to have an umbrella at all times?
Well, I don't know people my age. I'm 23. I feel like no one my age ever carries an umbrella.
People your age generally don't carry anything, do they?
Well, that's true.
We're highlighting the generational gap between us now.
Expecting their parents to pay for everything still. I mean, that's part of the problem. It has to be said.
Wrong.
Anyway, listen, you've both done very well. I can't quite decide because you've both actually been quite even-handed here. I'm going to have to see if I can go with the person who I think I agree with the most. And I think it might have to be Emma. I'm sorry. Ryan, Mark, listen, you might have to come back and have another go.
If you have me back.
But listen, it is a low bar, I have to say.
Hey.
I don't mean you, as your name is Emma Barr, but I mean to be better than Liz Truss, I'm afraid. You haven't wrecked the economy, you haven't fired your deputy, you haven't sort of fallen out with everybody in the party, so I think you've both done pretty well.
Thank you
thank you very much indeed. So Emma Barr, you win for this week. We'll have more next time on Prime Minister for the Week. It's been an even worse week than usual for the President of the United States. They're threatening to impeach him. Here's Biden's balls up.
I know I'm called middle class, Joe. It's not meant as a compliment, means I'm not sophisticated.
Now, in previous weeks, you will have heard me make an apology to Gary Lineker, and last week you might have heard me saying sorry to Kim Jong-un. Well, let's find out who I'm going to be sorry to this week. It's Apology of the Week. Tony Blair. He was Prime Minister of this country once. He thought he was a brilliant Prime Minister. Unfortunately, nobody agreed. He was doing OK until he decided to invade Iraq and cause complete and utter mayhem all over the Middle East and indeed the rest of the world. We're still suffering. But I wonder whether some of us have looked back at Tony Blair and thought, do you know what? He actually wasn't too bad. He was a world statesman. He did modernise the British economy. He did bring us kind of, the digital revolution. And even though Alistair Campbell was his henchman and not a very pleasant character, I wondered if I was actually being a bit hard on Tony Blair. But then, do you know what he did this week? This week he came out of his little shell and he decided to start lecturing us all about what we should be eating. And now he wants to put some kind of junk food tax on all the food that we're not supposed to eat because it's bad for us. Well, I'll tell you what, Tone, get lost, get back to Islington, get back in your house and don't come out. Well, that was the world according to Mike Graham for this week. We'll have another one for you soon. Coming up next, though, it's Kevin O'Sullivan with What Just Happened.